Thank you.
It's 5:15 here in India. I do not know what is the time in the other countries. I was listening to people from China and Thailand. So it is good to connect to all of them. And thank you for inviting me to talk on this topic. Well, I've been listening. Very interesting presentations have been made since yesterday, though I was not connected the entire day. But whatever I listened to, at least today, very interesting, where traditional methods have been used to heal. And as we know, most of the Eastern countries and even in India, the alternate medicine is very much in vogue, and we believe that there are less side effects, and we also experience less side effect compared to the other methods of treatment. Now, being coming from a nutrition department, being a nutritionist, my interest is on clinical nutrition, and I would be taking you all through a different journey where we need to adopt translational research methods in conveying the bench to bedside, in conveying the information from bench to bedside. So at the outset, greetings from my university. This is the administrative hall called as Crawford Hall, established. We are 106-year-old university. This is the main entrance of my university. And here you can see the main campus. This is an aerial view of our campus. These are all the 55 postgraduate departments situated in this huge 900 odd acre land. And we have some, for credits to the university, like the first university established in our state, sixth oldest in India. And we are lucky to have been established this university by a royal family. And 4 universities, we have given birth to 4 universities, and we have a main campus, which is what you are seeing on the screen. And there are 3 additional satellite campuses. And we have about 240 odd colleges which are affiliated to this main university. And this is my department, Food Science and Nutrition. You can see the entrance, and it was established in 1970. We completed 50 years in 2020. We offer masters and PhD in food science and nutrition, clinical nutrition and dietetics, and another subject, human development. We also offer PG diploma in food safety and applied nutrition, and also an online certificate course, nutrition and health. So this is just a glimpse of our facilities, what we have, and on the right panel, you can see the various topics which we are currently working on. To come to the topic, now, as we all know, research in health and nutrition is very, very essential. And this is what is the driving force, which is giving us information on how you can modify your diet and how you can improve your health. And that, is the holistic lifestyle alteration which is required. Now, I believe that there are 3 pillars of modern medicine. Health research is not a luxury, but in certain cases it becomes a luxury when you are when you don't have sufficient funding. Then we need medical and allied education to get the grasp of the principles, and ultimately to put the same thing into practice, we need to apply health research and the basic information what we learn from medical and allied education. Now, health research can and should be pursued by a broad range of people. Like it is now multidisciplinary, and we realize the importance of not working in silos and working with other streams of science also. Now, if you cannot conduct research ourselves, we need to grasp the principles of the scientific method to understand the value and limitations of science, and also to be able to assess and evaluate results of research before actually applying them on individuals. So the broad objective, just for your information, let me spend a minute or two on this, is the broad objective of nutrition research is to explore the relations between nutrition and human health, disease, and ultimately come up with some solutions for maintaining public health and also for the policies and ultimately in clinical practice. So it's a congregation of basic science, public health, clinical health, and community. Nutrition on its own is not a basic science, it is an applied science. So we are dependent on other fields, including human physiology, biochemistry, etc. So it is related to human health and chronic diseases. Today, we realize how much nutrition has advanced in the area of management of cancer, obesity, diabetes, CVD, neurodegenerative diseases as well, and osteoporosis. So with this background, what we understand is that nutrition programs and research have to be coordinated with other disciplines. And the approaches today range from the very basic, such as nutrigenomics and nutrigenetics, to studies in molecular biology and biochemical metabolism, followed by clinical trials, and not to forget the qualitative research, which is so essential, which is the foundation for nutrition research. So with that, we understand that there is translational nutrition research is needed. You need to translate from the bench to bedside for sustenance and for compliance. I'm sure most of the researchers are familiar with this typical expression of the translational research, which says that it follows a 17-year odyssey. Like it requires a journey of 17 years. Probably now it is shortened, but earlier it used to be like, commencing from basic research, which commences with establishing the priorities for research funding. And then each step is in itself a greater task to accomplish, and ultimately to put the same thing into practice for human welfare. What strategies are needed for providing evidences? Now, the basic research, what we talk of, is to find out how does this work. If you are working on a traditional medicine or a medicinal plant or any novel ingredient, you need to first be inquisitive about to know how does it work. So the basic research can be accomplished by adopting in vitro, in vivo, and ex vivo and animal models. This will help in the development of functional foods or bioactives or newer products with therapeutic potential. Now the same you are equipped with the proof of concept, then you will move on to translational research, from preclinical to clinical research, wherein you will try to establish this proof of concept by evaluating in small group of target groups, like it could be disease group or whichever is your target. So this second approach is, can it be studied in people? Followed by efficacy studies. These are long-term studies. It is possible from long-term studies to even establish some new biomarkers, and with the outcome, we can, prevent and conduct for intervention. It can be suggested to clinicians and dietitians and nutritionists, and also to establish dietary guidelines and to be used in nutrition counseling. So the last part is what is the approach that is for the society. But prior to that, we need to establish how does it work, can it be studied in people, and what are the specific effects. So these are the 4 stages of translational research: T1, T2, T3, and T4. That is translation to humans, which is preceded with preclinical studies, then clinical studies, translation to practice, and then ultimately translation to the population. So one of the major aim of my work is to provide a rational basis for the nutritional characterization of dietary carbohydrates. Largely, my work is focused on diabetes and also novel ingredients, including the medicinal plants in the Indian diet, to understand the mechanism of anti-diabetic action of traditional medicinal plants, to develop disease-specific formulations, and then also to study the efficacy in specific disease groups to see the metabolic and clinical outcome. Now, we have believed and we are following this translational approach. So these are the endeavors. Like in the research phase, what we use, identification of the health problem. Like it could be, for example, type 2 diabetes. So exploratory studies, basic research, and preclinical research, pre-intervention studies, all these are adopted. And the questions which are investigated, how does it work? What factors affect the what factors influence the glycemic index or the glycemic response? Is the food matrix important? How can we modify the food matrix? And what factors affect the carbohydrate digestibility and the responses? And if it is medicinal plants, what is the mechanism for the hypoglycemic action of the medicinal plant or the novel ingredient? And also to study the diet diversity and the nutritional status of type 2 diabetic subjects. And then ultimately, we need to apply to the human health. This has to be supported by clinical efficacy and observational studies. So what we have done is we have selected small group of type 2 diabetic subjects, or they could be subjects with dyslipidemia. So we have supplemented it in smaller number of subjects, and then ultimately moved on to larger number of subjects, because we have to be very sure that what you are proceeding is in the right direction. And ultimately, dissemination, this is what I'm doing, talking to you all, writing papers, publishing in the magazines and publishing in the journals. So ultimately, to put it into practice, you need to be having enough evidence. So today, nutrition is the pillar of nutrition practice is evidence-based practice or evidence-based nutrition. So the commercial food formulations, which are available in almost all countries for managing various diseases, for cancer, I'm going to talk about cancer and type 2 diabetes today. The icosapentaenoic acid and N3-PUFA, which are all derived from fish oil. Now, because majority of Indians are vegetarians, providing these supplements which are derived from animal sources is not ethical. So we need to look at newer products which could be cheaper. And lack of affordability is one important thing which governs the choice of all these commercial food formulations. Even though the doctors or the nutritionists prescribe, there is a limitation. The subjects or the patients may be unable to afford them. And the incidence of diabetes is increasing all over the world, but more so in India also. So there is a high risk of developing associated disorders in diabetic subjects. So we need to find an effective approach to combat this rise in type 2 diabetes. And for that, dietary management is the best solution. The basic research we have been exploring is the food-related aspects. For example, we have been screening a range of foods or ingredients which are commonly used in the Indian cuisine for their suitability as functional foods or ingredients, so that we can use them in the development of these disease-specific functional foods. These ingredients are none other than the common cereals, the pulses, the legumes, the cereal brands, the green leafy vegetables, the spices, and the medicinal plants. And these have been screened using simple in vitro and ex vivo methods. With respect to head and neck cancer, let me share our work, what we have done in this direction. One of the objectives was to develop a low-cost, high-energy, high-protein food formulation for head and neck cancer people. Sensory profile, the proximate, that is the nutrient profile, the mineral and fatty acid composition, and also the digestibility of this functional food formulation, the functional properties and how safe it is. Microbial safety was established, and we also conducted shelf life. That is, for how long can it stay without any deterioration. So here you can look, you can have a view. We named it as NutriCan. CAN is the cancer, HN is head and neck. So this is the nutrition labeling, and it costs approximately around 200 per kg compared to the 10 times more cost per kg of the commercial formulations. So the methodology we adopted was we processed them by washing, soaking, sprouting, drying, or malting, a combination of them. And then the milled flours were mixed in different proportions, enriched with protein isolates and edible oil and immune enhancers, which were derived from medicinal plants and other sources. Like it was even carrot we used as a to provide beta carotene. They were mixed in various proportions. Several variations were made, and finally the one which gave the best in terms of taste and also the nutritional attributes was selected. So we also used different processing conditions like drum drying and freeze drying methods were also followed to see which one gave us a best formula, so that when you add it in hot water or warm water, it could mix very easily, or it should be easy to reconstitute. That was the motive. So NutriCan HN. NutriFacts are high energy, high protein food formulation. It was developed to address the nutritional deficiencies which are observed in head and neck cancer patients. and that's why it was named this. And this one, like, in some of the hospitals, the patients may not have facility to have boiling water or even heat water, so that it can be reconstituted. So what we did was, we also used another different processing method, drum drying variation. It was also developed without any change in the composition. We enriched this composition with fatty acids, sources of edible oils and other sources, which could provide palmitic, oleic, lauric, and linoleic acid, and the same was also evaluated by GC method. We also found that this composition was a rich source of potassium, sodium, calcium, and magnesium. The shelf life of the developed product was about 3 months, and this is the nutritive value per 100 gram. It provides about 396 kilocalories, 40 gram carbohydrate, which was digestible, protein about 25 gram per 100 gram. Here they need high protein because of the impact of cancer, and also because of the chemotherapy or the radiation which they undergo. There will be accelerated protein loss. So to overcome that, they need to be supplemented with high protein, and fat content also is about 12 grams per 100 gram. Fiber is about 14. So when you reconstitute, it provides about 1 to 1.33 kilocalories per ml of reconstituted supplement. Now here you can see in these figures, in these diagrams, you can see the composition of the fatty acid. It contained almost lauric acid, myristic, palmitic, all these essential fatty acids, linoleic acid and linolenic. Linolenic because we did not add any specific source of linolenic, and oleic acid. All these, this was a fairly good source of fatty acids. And the proximate composition, you can see one is the control and another is the drum dried. More or less, they had a similar quantity. There was no much statistically different values. And the micronutrients, as against the RDA, like every 100 grams will provide about 15% adequacy of zinc and copper, iron, manganese, chromium, calcium, potassium, magnesium, and sodium. And the microbial count, as I mentioned, to establish the microbial safety, we did this on day 0 and day 120. And the bacterial spore count was the same. There was no enhancement in that. Neither was there a rise in the total yeast and the mold count. E. coli and salmonella and other microorganisms were absent in the formulation. So that was a testimony to the hygiene we followed in the making of the functional formulation. Further, we went on to report this register in the Clinical Trials Registry of India, and then we went on to do the efficacy studies, to what extent it can curtail the weight loss and the weight trajectory, which I will be presenting in the later slides. So we assessed head and neck cancer patients for eligibility. So out of them, about 56 gave their consent, and we randomized them into 2 groups. One was the intervention group and the other was the control group, about 29. And we lost 7 people to follow up, some because they didn't survive, and some discontinued the intervention. And even in the control group was not given any intervention. This formulation was not given to them. They were just managed on the hospital diet or their self diet, whatever. So these received the supplementation along with nutrition counseling. Ultimately, it was 18 and about 20 in the control group. So here in this figure, you can see the weight loss or the weight changes. The orange dotted line indicates the intervention group, these bar graphs, and then the blue ones indicate the ones which were the control group. You can see that there was a decline in the weight, whereas in the group which was provided with intervention, the weight loss was not that significantly more higher compared to the control group. And overall, definitely the body mass index was also quite, maintained. It was 19.13 here on 15-day, and day 45 it was 18.57, which indicates that there was no much reduction in weight. The weight loss trajectory, this is very, very important because, the weight loss can be very fast, it can be rapid in those due to the impact of the disease itself. And in India, unfortunately, most of the cancer patients, they go for the healthcare only when it is in the end stage, and it will be diagnosed only when it is in the third stage or in the last stage. So that time we cannot do any reversal of the disease, nor there can be, all we can do is palliative care, and to see that they will not suffer. The nutrition impact symptoms can be controlled, and we can provide them some nourishment and to bear especially the chemotherapy and the radiation, and so that the weight loss can be curtailed. And we can confidently say in this case, this provision of this formulation for 45 days, it helped in curtailing the weight loss. We also saw an improvement in the food intake and also in the functional status. So normally when they become very weak, they are underweight, the movement, the ability to maintain their daily activities also will be minimized. And we found that from day 0 to day 15, day 30 and day 45, there was a gradual increase they were able to take very little solids, and they were able to take more solids at the end of the study period. And similarly, the activity level also, because the weight loss was minimal, so therefore they felt a little energetic at the end of 45 days. Now that was with regard to the supplementation study in a small number of head and neck cancer patients. This is yet one more clinical study wherein we again adopted the translational research. We identified some of the ingredients, did the screening, did the ex vivo and in vitro screening, that is glucose adsorption and ability to inhibit the enteric enzymes, and all that was elucidated in the preclinical studies, followed by animal studies in rats, which established the efficacy of certain bioactives, including the mulberry plant, which we have investigated exhaustively for its anti-diabetic effects. The botanical name is Morus indica. Equipped with the preclinical information, we had the proof of concept. So then we moved on to conduct a study where we developed a formulation and we named it NutriCare DM. DM stands for diabetes mellitus. So the impact of supplementation in type 2 diabetics was analyzed, adopting a free living randomized study institute. So type 2 diabetic subjects who were managed on oral hypoglycemic agents, aged between 40 to 60. The criteria was they ought to be having the fasting blood glucose at around 140 milligram deciliter without any complications like retinopathy, nor nephropathy or neuropathy. And they ought not to be on hypolipidemic drugs. So such subjects who are attending the health center of the University of Mysore were selected for the study with informed consent. So ultimately we had about 30 subjects. They were provided with NutriCare DM floor around, which was equivalent to 50 gram carbohydrate portion, which is sufficient for one meal. And another group was given a similar formulation, but it did not contain the bioactives nor the functional ingredients. And we supplemented this so that it was a single blind study, and it was provided for about 4 months. The biochemical parameters we followed up were fasting blood glucose, postprandial blood sugars, HbA1c, which is a long-term indicator of your glycemic status, liver function test, and lipid profile pre and post intervention. So this is a gist, or in a nutshell, a bird's eye view of the results. A functional formulation, NutriCare DM, was analyzed for nutritionally important starch fractions, and we analyzed the various fractions, like you can see here the total starch, rapidly digestible starch, the resistant starch, the slowly digestible starch, by adopting a controlled enzymic method, and we used a standard method. The functional ingredients we used, as we all know, oats and barley, due to the presence of beta glucan, have got an ability to increase the viscosity of the gastrointestinal milieu, and therefore it can restrict the action of the enteric enzymes on the substrate. Besides that, it also has hypolipidemic effect. Soya, because of its protein content. Psyllium fiber also has a viscosity enhancing effect. Rice bran was used as a fiber source. And we use the spice cinnamon for its hypoglycemic effect, which was proven in one of our earlier studies. The total starch of the control was very high, whereas in the formulation it was low. The rapidly digestible starch in the formulation was much lesser, whereas in the control it was more. Similarly, the resistant starch in the product was higher, and the slowly digestible starch in both the variations was more or less similar. So the starch digestibility index we made a product chapati, which is an unleavened bread, very commonly used in the Indian cuisine. It was 13. The index was 13, which is definitely much lower and compared to the control chapati, which is prepared out of only using wheat flour. These results have been published. So if you're interested, you can refer the Malaysian Journal of Nutrition. What we found at the end of, after 3 months, is that you can see there is a gradual reduction in the fasting blood in the regular diet, as the ingredients used are all natural, commonly consumed with no side effects at all. They provide nutritional support, and they are very effective in the management of type 2 diabetes, in the dietary management of type 2 diabetes. So at the end of it, what I would like to reiterate and emphasize is that an understanding of the mechanism to match the physiological requirement should be the key driver for nutrition research. And we can definitely develop a rationale for their effective use, either singly or in combination with the oral hypoglycemic agents which are used in the management of diabetes. And we can also avoid potential adverse herb-drug interactions by doing preclinical studies and also by doing toxicity studies. And this is the way to move forward to develop new formulations which can be cost-effective compared to the quite expensive commercial formulations. I wouldn't say that they are not effective. They're definitely very effective, but the large majority of diabetics or patients suffering from cancer in India belong to the lower middle class or the poorer section, and so affordability is a big issue for them. So this is the need of the day for driving the nutritionists to undertake research in developing disease-specific formulations. So I thank the organizers for giving me an opportunity to share, and in this context, I would like to thank my arteries, that is she was part of the work on NutriCare DM, and Namrata and Chandan. I thank the University Grants Commission for funding our studies. Thank you very much for patient listening, and I'll be happy to take any questions.